Module 2, Fractions and Decimals. This is section 2.7, Operations on Mixed Numbers. When you're working with mixed numbers, you're always going to need to change them into an improper fraction when you're multiplying and dividing. If I was multiplying 10 times 8, 7/8, I would need to make sure that this number is written as a fraction by putting the invisible positive 1 underneath, so that I can multiply straight across. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. 70/8, of course, is still going to leave you an improper fraction. If you start with improper fractions, it's a good chance you're going to end with improper fractions. I can reduce this a little bit if I divide each of these numbers by 2. And I get down to 35/4. And then I would need to say 4 goes into 35 how many times? Well, 8, because 8 times 4 is 32. When I subtract, I'll have 3 left over. 8 is a whole number portion, and 3 is the remainder. So 35/4 is the same as 8 3/4. If you have a mixed number that has a whole number and a fractional part, like 2 and 2/2 divided by a 1/2, I'm going to need to change my 2 and 1/2 to a improper fraction. 2 times 2 is a 4, plus 1 is 5. That's your new numerator. Keep the same denominator. Now I can say 5/2 divided by a 1/2. When you divide, you keep the first the same, change division to multiplication, and take the reciprocal of the second fraction. 5 times 2 is 10, and 2 times 1 is 5. Of course, 10 divided by 2 is 5. Let's look at a few more. For letter A, I would need to change 2 and 2/3 to an improper fraction. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 more is 8. 8 is my new numerator. Keep the same denominator. Now I can multiply by the 1/2. 8 times 1 is 8, and 3 times 2 is 6. I can reduce this by dividing both of them by a 2 for a 4/3. 3 goes into 4 once, and I'll have a remainder of a 1. And so another way to say 4/3 is 1 1/3. For letter C, I'll still need to start with changing my mixed number to an improper. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 more is 21. That's my new numerator. Now I have division, so I'm going to need to change that to multiplication and take the reciprocal of the second fraction. 21 times 5 is 105, and 5 times 1 is 5. 5 goes into a 105 many times. 5 will go into 10 twice. 2 times 5 is 10, and I don't have anything left over, and I still need to bring down the 5 though. 5 goes into 5 once. And so 1 times 5 is 5. I have no remainder. So I'll just have the whole number part of 21. Pause the video and see if you can solve B and D. For letter B, I would need to change 3 and 3/4 to a mixed number. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 more is 15. Keep the same denominator. 1 and 3/5, well, 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 more is 8. So I have 8/5. Multiply straight across, and I get 8 times 15, which is going to be 120. 5 times 4 is 20. And 20 goes into 120 6 times, without any remainder, since 6 times 20 is 120. And so 120 over 6 is just 120 over 20 is just the 6. For letter D, 3 and 1/3 will turn into 10/3, since 3 times 3 is 9, and 1 more is 10. I would need to divide by 2 and 3/5, which would turn into 10 plus 3, which would be 13/5. Now I'll keep the first fraction the same, change division to multiplication, and take the reciprocal of the second one. 10 times 5 is 50, 3 times 13 is 39. 39 goes into 50 once, and you'll have a remainder of an 11. So 50 over 39 is 1 and 11 over 39. Addition and subtraction is a little bit more challenging. When you're adding, you're still going to need a common denominator. So if I have 12 and 5 twelfths plus 4 and 1 sixth, I will need to get a common denominator between the 12 and the 6. Well, that's a 12. Since the first one already has a denominator of a 12, I only need to multiply by a 1. And that first top fraction will stay the same, 12 and 5 twelfths. To turn a 6 into a 12, I need to multiply by a 2. So I'll need to do that in the top and the bottom. So my second fraction will become 4 and 2 twelfths. I'll add the numerators for 7, keep the denominator the same, and then add the whole number portion of 12 and 14 for 16. Sometimes when you add these numbers, you get an improper and a mixed number at the same time. Say something like 16 and 13 over 12. I would need to then change this fractional piece to another improper 12 or another mixed number. So I have 12 into 13. 12 goes in once with a remainder of 1. And so 13 over 12 is the same as 1 and 1/12. But I already had 16 out here, so I would need to add to that 1. And so this would become 17 and 1/12. Even sneakier is subtraction. Of course you need a common denominator, and here a common denominator is 25. When I multiply my numerator and denominator of the first fraction by 5 to get the common denominator of 25, that will turn my first fraction into 9 and 5/25. But my second fraction is already a 25, so I don't need to multiply. I can't say 5 minus 6. I'll wind up with a negative number, and I can't have negatives inside of the fractions with my mixed number. So I'm going to have to do something called borrow. I'm going to have to borrow a whole group of 25 out of this 9. So I'm going to cross off the 9, and I'm going to make that into an 8. And I'm going to add that whole piece to here. A whole is 25 things. So just like before, if I had 80 and 30 over 25, I could change just the 30 over and 25 to 1 and 5/25. That's where this 1 got taken off that 9. Whatever you're always only going to just borrow a group of 1. Just add the denominator to that top fraction. Now I can subtract. 30 minus 6 is going to be 24. And 8 minus 8 is 0. Let's try a few. How about we do A and E together, and then you guys can try B and F. For letter A, I have 10 and 1/2 plus 7 and 1/9. I'm going to need to get a common denominator, which is 18. I'll multiply by a 9 on the denominator here, so I'll need to multiply by a 9 up top. For my second fraction, I'll just need to multiply by a 2, so I'll multiply by a 2 up top. Now I can add my fractions. 9 plus 11 is 20. That's over 18. And then 10 plus 7 is 17. But I have this improper here. So I'm going to need to come out to the side and say 20 over 18. What's that as an improper? 18 goes into 20 once. I'll have a remainder of 2. So 20 over 18 is the same as 1 and 2/18. But I already had 17 whole things. So now when I combine the 17 and the 1 and 2/18, I'll get 18 and 2/18. And you can reduce that if you want, since 2 and 18 can both be divided by 2 to 18 and 1/9. For letter E, I have 15 and 8/9 And I'm going to subtract 6 and 2/9. Oh, they're already like denominators, so I don't need to find a common denominator. I could just go ahead and subtract. 8 minus 2 is a 6 over 9, and then 15 minus 6 is a 9. You can reduce 6/9 by dividing both of those by 3 and getting 2/3. See if you can find B and F. Okay, let's see what you got for B and F. I'm going to erase all of this so we have some room to write. I'll need a common denominator in both B and F. In B, my common denominator, at least the least common multiple, will be a 9. You could use 27. Sometimes you look at them and you just can't think of anything. You could just multiply the two denominators together. It will work. It just won't be smaller, the smallest usually. So this already is a 9, so I'll just rewrite that. In order to get this to be a 9, I need to multiply by a 3, so I have a 3 up here. 3 plus 4 is 7, so I have 7/9, and then 6 plus 13 is 19. It's a regular fraction on that fractional piece, so I don't have to worry about changing that to an improper. In F, I have 19 and 1/25, and then minus a 7 and 1/5. My common denominator is a 25. Well, this is already 25, so I'll write it like that. To turn this into a 25, I'm going to need to multiply by a 5. So I have 5 over 25, and I can't say 1 minus 5. So I'm going to need to borrow. I'm going to take one whole group out of here, so this becomes an 18. And once again, my group is a 25, so I'm going to add 25 to this piece and turn this into a 26. Now I can go ahead and subtract. 26 minus 5 is 21. 18 minus 7 is 11. Let's look at a word problem. The total weight allowable without overcharges is 50 pounds, but the traveler's luggage is 60 and 5/8 pounds. So how much over is our traveler? Well, it's 60 and 5/8, but he's only allowed to have 50. It doesn't have a fractional piece, so I'll just say 0 out of 8. That way I have a common denominator, right? If I have a whole 50 and no extra pieces, then it's 0 out of those pieces. Now I can subtract. 5 minus 0 is 5, and 60 minus 50 is 10. So the traveler is over 10 and 5/8 pounds. And that's how you complete operations with mixed numbers.